Welcome, friends, to another teaching opportunity of the Holy Mountain Church of God, End Time Bible Prophecy, Wesleyan End Time Bible Prophecy. We have an exciting lesson today, further understanding and enlightenment. 7 key time frames in true end time Bible prophecy. End time Bible prophecy is really about time frames. That's the key to the whole thing, especially in the book of Revelation. And we're going to look at the time frames as they are couched in symbols in apocalyptic literature. If you try to take apocalyptic literature literally, that is the time frames, it doesn't make any sense. It's symbols, see. So understanding the meaning of the symbols. Now, symbols in relation to time frames is the key, see. Events are clear. We can understand an event as it's described, but the time frames are the key, and the symbolic meanings of the time frames is the unsealing of the deep mysteries that have been hid for ages, and we're presenting to you what we believe to be the truth. 7 key time frames in end-time Bible prophecy. Number 1 is Daniel's prophecy of the 70th week. This is key. The 70th week is key to understanding end-time Bible prophecy. What is the meaning of it? Let me give it to you clearly. It contradicts everything that you may have been taught in dispensationalism, which posits the idea of a future Antichrist as the covenant maker of Daniel 9:27, making and breaking the peace treaty in the future 7 years. Well, that's fiction. You see, there's no exegetical basis for that. The truth is, the Wesleyan truth is, and the biblical truth is, that Jesus Christ is the divinely intended covenant maker of Daniel's 70th week. And that means that the covenant in question is the new covenant of the Christian revelation. And so looking at the 70th week in this way gives us a totally new and different approach to understanding end-time Bible prophecy. And that's what we're advocating, you see. Dispensationalists will tune us out when they find out we're not giving the run-of-the-mill that they believe, but you're learning here, see. Jesus Christ is the true covenant maker of that 70th week. The true understanding of Daniel's 70th week is that it refers to the Christian age, the kingdom age, that began on the day of Pentecost, when the kingdom came with power, and reaches forward in time until Jesus returns for the last judgment. Now, that's just the simple overview of the 70th week. What is it? It's the new kingdom age, the new covenant age of salvation for the whole world through the death and resurrection of Christ. And it is, in terms of boundaries, beginning at Pentecost, the coming of the kingdom of righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit, and reaching forward until Christ comes for the last judgment. It's the age, you see. That's the 70th week as a symbol for the present Christian age. Now, that's exegetically sustainable, and I have all that deep structure education. You know, this is academic, friends. I'm not making this up. If you get to be a serious Bible scholar and get into heavy academics, you'll find out I'm right on. I've done my homework, you see. This isn't superficiality. This isn't shallowness. This isn't sensationalism. This is not speculation. This is heavy academics, see. I know what I'm talking about because I've done my homework in the academic world, and I can speak with confidence and with authority. Jesus Christ is a covenant maker. The covenant is the new covenant, and it refers to the present age. The kingdom came, you see. The dispensationalists believe Jesus is coming back to set up his kingdom. Well, he already did that. It's a misunderstanding, see. Basic misinterpretation, misunderstanding. The kingdom came, the promised kingdom came with the coming of the Spirit, you see, the coming of the kingdom, the day of Pentecost. And Peter's sermon clearly sets that out when Peter said God raised up Christ to sit on David's promised kingdom throne in Acts chapter 2, verses 24 through 36. You can read it there. It's very clear, but people ignore the sermon of the day of Pentecost. But we know what the truth is. The kingdom came, you see, on the day of Pentecost, and we're living in the kingdom age, salvation, righteousness, and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. We're not waiting for a millennial kingdom for it to have righteousness on earth, peace on earth, or joy on earth. It comes through the Spirit, through salvation. Jesus reigns from the throne, David's promised kingdom throne in heaven, on earth, through saving grace. He reigns in me and you if we're saved, see. On earth. Jesus reigns on earth. He reigns through me on earth. I'm on earth. You're on earth as Christians. And Jesus is reigning on earth through his church, the body of Christ on earth. So that settles that, see. This whole notion of earthly kingdom is just baloney. It's fiction, see. You need to get over it because it's heresy. Jesus already established his kingdom, its salvation, the new covenant. Now that's settled. That's Daniel's 70th week. Now that's number one, see. That's time frame number one. And that's where we start, you see. Now we go on to the second time frame, and we're going to mention an expression called times and a half. Now there's three elements to that, and each one of those becomes further delving into another time frame, you see. So we have the expression times and a half, which refers to the present age as well. And we're going to see that as we look at the expression time. What is a time? Well, I believe that time, in the expression times and a half, is the time of Jacob's trouble, which is prophesied in Jeremiah 30, verse 6. And what Daniel said in chapter 12, verse 1, there shall be a time of trouble such as never was. He begins chapter 12 in Daniel with the at that time, Michael will stand up to be a time of trouble, referring to the Jewish war with Rome, you see, that began in 66 A.D., the rebellion against the domination of Rome and the subsequent war with Rome. And it ended officially in 135 A.D. with the destruction of 70 A.D., the destruction of the temple, and then further rebellions, and finally the crushing of the rebellion in the final war that with Rome, Jews fighting against Rome. And at the 135 A.D., when the Roman Emperor Hadrian put a shrine to the Roman goddess of Jupiter on the Temple Mount and forbade the Jews to set foot on the Temple Mount, see. So that was the end. And the historians, if you study in the accredited historians, that was called the end of the Jewish Commonwealth. It's a very important date. We don't hear much about it, but actually it's very important in Bible prophecy. So the period between the Jewish war with Rome between 66 and 135 AD, which is 69 years, approximately 69 years, is the Jewish war with Rome, the time of Jacob's trouble, you see. So then in the expression, there's times following the time. The times is the times of the Gentiles. You know, Jesus says in Luke 24, Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And then, of course, we have that same expression in Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, the holy city shall the Gentiles tread underfoot 42 months. Now, we're going to talk about that 42 months in a minute, but that's another time frame. But the trotting down of the Gentiles refers to the end of the war with Rome and Israel going into the Gentile diaspora. That's very important. That's neglected by dispensationalists and other false end-time teachers. They don't know much about or say much about the Jewish diaspora as being important in prophecy, but it is very important, and you'll see that in our teaching. So the times is the times of the Gentiles after 135 AD and the times in which the Jews would be under the times of the Gentiles in the diaspora, you see, that they entered into. And that's in chapter 12, the woman, earthly Jerusalem, bringing forth the man-child, the Lord Jesus Christ, who is caught up to heaven in his ascension. And the woman flees into the wilderness out of the land back into the wilderness. You know, they came out of Egypt through the wilderness into the land. They go out of the land back into the wilderness. And that's referring to the diaspora, you see, dispossessed of the land after 135. The Jews were driven out to all nations, Jerusalem trodden down to the Gentiles, till the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. There's the second. The times is the times of the Gentiles. Now, as we look at this second part, now we'll come back to the half a time as a further time frame. So you have Daniel's 70th week. You have the times and a half, the time being the time of Jacob's trouble, the period of the Jewish war, and then the times after that, the times of the Gentiles. Now, as we look at this third times of the Gentiles, we have a breaking down of that in the book of Revelation. Very important, very interesting. We have expressions that help us to understand what that is. And we're going to look at that now as we look at the fourth time frame, and it's called the 42 months. And we see that expression in the book of Revelation. I just mentioned it in chapter 11, verse 2. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles for 42 months. And we have that expression again over in chapter 13 and verse 5, where it's talking about the Roman beast. You know, that John sees the beast, and power was given to continue 42 months. Revelation 13:5 is talking about Rome, the Roman Empire, in both its pagan form and then in its papal form. The times of the domination of Rome would be for 42 months over Israel. See, Israel is a centerpiece here. The book of Revelation is focusing on the Jews, particularly because they made themselves enemies of Christ, you see. And Jesus had a lot to say to them. He said, your house is left unto you desolate. You'll not see me until you change your attitude toward me, you see. And so this book of Revelation is about the church, and we see that, but it's also about the Christ-rejecting Jews and their fate in the diaspora, and then in the end, very interesting, we'll get to that in a minute. So we see the times of the Gentiles under Rome, 42 months. Now, here's the key to understanding the 42 months. It's very important. It's a symbolism. Now, time frames, events are clear. Time frames is the issue. In apocalyptic literature, the time frames are not literal, they're symbolic. And the meaning of the apocalyptic symbolism of the 42 months is to understand this. The month stands for a generation, you see. A month is the longest ever recurring measurement of time. You know, days, months, years, then you come back the next year you have the 12 months, name them, and then it recurs but it's the longest ever recurring period that ever recurs. A year never recurs, it goes on and on. You know, you never go back to the year, but you come back to the months every year, if you can see that. Ever recurring. So as a month is the longest ever recurring measurement of time in chronology, so in the passage of humans in time, the longest ever recurring framework is the generation. See, generation after generation, month after month in chronology, generation after generation ever recurring in the duration of the human month. That's the connection, see, logically. It's a logical, and there are verses that hint at this, and we have those listed in our book. So it's a logical 42 months. Months equals a generation. It's a passage of time, passage of humans in time. Generations, see. So there are 42 generations is what is being said there in the 42 months. When the Jews would be in the Roman diaspora, that length of time. Well, if a month is a generation of 40 years, you take 42 times 40, you get 1,680 years. Okay, so they were to be in the diaspora 1,680 years. Well, if it started officially in 135 AD, the war ended and the times the Gentiles officially began, you add 1,680 to 135 AD, and you get the year 1791. Now that's very significant because that was the date of the French Revolution. So what's important about the French Revolution? Because the French Revolution brought an end to the Holy Roman Empire that had been in existence for 1,000 years. You know, Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of Rome, crowned the Pope Emperor of Rome. So you had that relationship between the emperor, the secular empire, and the head of the church, the Pope, 1,000 years, the Holy Roman Empire. Someone said it was neither holy nor an empire, but in history, the idea is clear. There was that empire. It was called the Holy Roman Empire, dominated history for 1,000 years in time. So you have then in church history, as you study the history of Rome, the ancient Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, overrun by the pagan tribes of northern Europe. Of course, there was the split between East and West. Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, moved the emperor to the East. You have then the development of Eastern Orthodox Christianity in the East, but in the West it was under Rome. The Roman Empire fell, the Holy Roman Empire rose and continued until the French Revolution. And the Jews in the West, in the Roman Empire, were in their diaspora during that period. That's the 1,680 years. So as we think of the French Revolution, it was significant to notice how important that was. It brought an end to the Holy Roman Empire, fulfilling the prophecy that Jerusalem would be trodden down of the Gentiles 42 months under Rome. As 13:5 makes clear, the Roman Empire was given power to continue in its effect of the diaspora until the French Revolution. Then the empire terminated, and the diaspora, the Jews in the empire, terminated. And here's another angle to that. Napoleon Bonaparte, who took power after the chaos of the French Revolution, brought things back. The French Revolution was an awful time. People were beheaded right and left. Anybody that studies a little bit of world history knows even the king and queen, I believe it was Louis XIV, was beheaded. See, in the chaos of the French Revolution. It was a secular, it was a rebellion against the authority of the Catholic Church. The rise of secularism and atheism, during that period, they tried to change even the Christian calendar, going from a 5-day week to an 8-day week. They tried to change everything Christian. It was a secular, demonic, really, rebellion against the authority of the church, because of the conditions of that time. And that was after the American Revolution. You see, the French Revolution, very closely related to the American Revolution, you see. And Benjamin Franklin was the ambassador to France during that time of chaos. See, and France helped the Americans fight the British in our War of Independence. So we have a history into the French Revolution in terms of the secularization and the Counter-Reformation. After the Protestant Reformation, the Catholics fought back. There was, of course, the wars in Europe of the 16th century, the 100 Years' War. All the 1600s was religious wars between Protestants and Catholics on the continent of Europe, fought to a standstill. But so the history goes on, you see, and so Catholics fought back against Protestants in the Counter-Reformation, and the Jesuits had something to do, a lot to do really, with the founding of the United States as an empire. It was founded in Little Rome, you see, to counter the Protestants. The Catholics really were involved in the Masons, and you have this element of mystery cultishness coming in, you see, in the founding of America as part of the Counter-Reformation, so that the Catholics would have a say in America, see, and it wouldn't just be a Protestant Christian, but the Catholics and the Protestants. Really, our history is still influenced by the Protestant Reformation 500 years ago. But let's stay on our track here to look at history. The French Revolution brought an end to the Roman domination and the rise of, if you go to Revelation 13, you know, the Roman beast, and then there's another beast in the land coming up out of the land with two horns. Now, some could see the British American Empire in the two horns. Some call that the false prophet because of the speaking as a lamb, the appearance of a lamb speaking as a dragon. You see a false, well, there is both of those elements in there, because what happened under Napoleon Bonaparte was the restoration of civil liberties to the Jews who had been in the diaspora under Rome. Then when Napoleon took over, he favored the Jews regaining their civil liberties in Europe, which they had lacked for hundreds of years. If you study the medieval history and late medieval history of Europe, they kicked the Jews out of many European countries because they were viewed as troublemakers. It was the Holy Roman Empire. The Jews were second-class citizens. But when the Holy Roman Empire fell and Napoleon came to power, he liberated the Jews and brought them back into the society of Europe, and not as second class, but gave them their civil rights, see. And that was very important because that led, it was the bringing of the Jews out of the Roman diaspora and giving them the ability then to develop their place in society, which led in the 19th century to the rise of Zionism, see, political Zionism. First Zionist Congress, I believe, was in 1895, and Theodor Herzl, founder of political Zionism, was an atheist, but he was very instrumental. So it was a process, you see. From the time of the French Revolution, the Jews regaining their civil liberties until the rise of Zionism in Europe, then World War I, World War II, the creation of the Zionist state of Israel. That's all history, see. But it's very important history and prophecy because you had, after the French Revolution, you had the woman in the wilderness of the Roman diaspora. And you go into chapter 17 and you see a woman in the wilderness riding a beast. Well, the beast is the empire, see. So in the fate of history, the Jews, having suffered from the oppression of the diaspora, gained political and social power in Europe, in secular Europe, the Jewish, until it progressed until you have World Zionism, and then you have Zionism basically controlling Western Europe, the governments of Europe after World War II, especially the United States, which is an extension of Rome, you see, really. But this is where the Zionist hegemony is over America and Western Europe. Zionism being the second beast of the false prophet, you see. Because Zionism is false prophecy in the sense of the influence of Christianity here. And in studying the history of Zionism, it's very important to notice that Theodor Herzl was an atheist, and the Jews were simply wanting to cast off the stigma of anti-Semitism that had been so much a part of Europe, you see, for hundreds of years. Even Martin Luther, in his zeal to promote the Reformation, had hoped the Jews would embrace Protestant ideas. They didn't, and he turned against them, and he wrote a diatribe against the Jews. Martin Luther did, and some see that very anti-Semitic. Well, there was truth to Martin Luther's assessment of the Jews, but that's part of the history there too. See, Germany, the land of the Reformation, Martin Luther became the place of the Holocaust in the Second World War, so there's a religious component to that. You see, this anti-Semitism of Europe, even highlighted by Martin Luther's diatribe against the Jews, that latent anti-Semitism in Germany was instrumental in the part of the issue of the Holocaust. It's a complex subject, but then the Zionists were also politically motivated to sacrifice their own people for the larger political motivation of what was to become the state of Israel. See, there's a lot of thought, and maybe that's far enough to go in that. That's not our main thread here, but we're coming back to see another times of the Gentiles. So there's the times of the Gentiles under Rome, and then there's after the 1791. You have another time frame. So let's move on to that in the fifth trumpet. See, you have the unleashing. A star fell from heaven, chapter 9, verses 1 through 11, the fifth trumpet, book of Revelation. A star fell from heaven and opened the bottomless pit. Now, take note here. The bottomless pit, Satan is bound in the bottomless pit in Revelation 20, right? And that's a premillennial thing, you know. Satan was bound in the bottomless pit. Well, the bottomless pit's back in chapter 9. It's opened in chapter 9. An angel fell. Now, an angel could refer to a minister of the gospel. Stars or angels can be the angels of the churches, the ministers. A fallen minister, some could see an analogy there, opens the bottomless pit. In other words, apostasy within the church opens the gates of hell, so that the locusts, described as locusts, but really demons, arise out of the smoke of the pit. They have a king over them, Abaddon, the destroyer. So get this. This is the unleashing of the demonic, Satan, from the bottomless pit in Revelation 20. You see, so it's recapitulation. That's clear. Maybe you never saw it that way, but it opens up the book of Revelation to see it this way, see. So in chapter 9, you have the unleashing of the demonic hordes from the bottomless pit, which is what Revelation 20, verses 7 through 11 is talking about, see. Very important concept to get. I saw this years ago. It slowly developed, but it's very important. So now let's hold that thought. These demonic hordes have power to torment men 5 months. Chapter 9, verses 5 and 10. The locusts torment those who have not the seal of God for 5 months. Now here, go back. This is months. Go back to generations. Go back to 5 generations, 200 years. Pick up at the French Revolution. After that, you had secular Europe, the rise of the Jews, back with a woman in the wilderness, coming to assume dominance over the beast. The rise of the Jews. They were sent into the diaspora because of the rebellion and Christ's rejection. Jesus said, your house has left you desolate, a desolate house. Judaism was to be a desolate house, according to Jesus in Matthew 23, verse 27, until they change their attitude, see. Got to change. The Jews have to change their attitude toward Jesus, and they can do that at any time. We all have to change our attitude toward Jesus. But Jesus said, you're a desolate house until you change your attitude. Well, that's talking about the diaspora. And now, in coming out of the diaspora under Rome, the false prophecy of Zionism. Now, I was going to say earlier that Theodore Herzl, the atheist, was amazed to meet Christian premillennialists in England at that time, who were glorying in their version of Bible prophecy to see a homeland for the Jews. So there was an enablement from the emerging dispensationalism, premillennialism and dispensationalism in British premillennialism became an enabler of the Zionist cause, and Herzl was amazed. They had more faith than he did, but they saw it as Bible prophecy. Herzl was an atheist. He didn't believe in God or in Christ. See, Zionism is a secular movement. Got to understand that. Political Zionism is secular. So you have the secular political Zionism, then you have the religious premillennialism wedded together in an unholy alliance that facilitated the rise of Christian Zionism, which became an issue after the creation of the Zionist state of Israel. Now, Huckabee U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee, I believe it is, a U.S. ambassador to Israel. He's heretical. These people are big heretics, Christian Zionists. That they think that Israel was so important to the United States. See, from its history, there wouldn't be a United States without Israel. Well, the United States was founded in 1776. Israel was created in 1948. That's nonsense. I mean, we had a 100-year or more history without the state of Israel. It's just crazy. They're so delusional. Huckabee is delusional. All the Christian Zionists are totally delusional in their theory, you see. But let's hold on to our line of thought. You have the demonic hordes, the rise of Zionism, secular Zionism. You have premillennial heresy. And then you have the creation of this movement that we have today that's behind the ferment of the state of Israel, Greater Israel, see. Well, that's 200 years, see. That's the demonic torment. That's the seventh trumpet. And so you go from 1791, fast forward 200 years, you get 1998. Well, if you take the 200 years from solar time to prophetic time, it is 197 years. See, you have to make the conversion because the prophecy is in prophetic time, 360 days per year, not 365.244. And that's how we get these dates. That's the prophetic dates. See, 1988. Well, what was 1988? You ever hear of 88 reasons why Christ could come in 1988? That was the height of the scandal of dispensationalism. Edgar Weisnot wrote that book. And it was the craziest thing you ever heard of. He had 88 reasons why the rapture, and he had every conceivable date. Now, here's what we got to understand about 88 reasons. It scandalized dispensationalism. It didn't scandalize the second coming. It didn't scandalize Bible prophecy. It scandalized dispensationalism because he was a dispensationalist. That's what you got to know. Edgar Weisnot was a dispensationalist. He carried the heresy of dispensationalism to its logical conclusion of date setting, and it fell flat on its face. That's a change, see. And then dispensationalism became sort of discredited. All at once, everybody began to have a lot of cognitive dissonance. And so the whole thing blew up. And then you had, in that same period, the 90s, you had the Left Behind series, dispensationalism. It scandalized everything. Who could top the Left Behind series? Nobody. What happened to that? It got left behind, see, because it was all false doctrine. So the dispensational theory blew up at around 1988, at end of an era, see, and things changed. Now we're in a period of change. So then we come to the half a time. See, you got the 42 months. Okay, you got the time is the time of the Jewish Jewish war with Rome, which was 69 years. Then you had the times of the Gentile diaspora, 42 months and 5 months, brings us to 1988. And then you have the half a time. What was the time? The time was the Jewish war with Rome, 69 years. What's half a time? Half of 69, 34 and a half years. You add 34 and a half years, half the time. The original time was the time of the Jewish war. And then you come to 2022.5. Things were happening, you see. You had Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and within a year you had October 7th. That's changed the world, see, our world. So you have then about that period of changing, and that, I believe, was the end, really, the beginning of the end, see, of the collapse of the empire, the woman riding the beast, the Zionist-controlled empire of the West, is in transition, demise, collapse, apocalyptic destruction. Now, there's one more time frame. that we can notice, and that's times and a half. In 2 times in the book of Revelation, you have the 2 witnesses prophesy 1,260 days, which is half of the 70th week. Dispensations will acknowledge that. In the popular idea of the 7-year tribulation, you have first 3.5 years to 1,260 days, second 3.5 years, 1,260 days. And they're familiar with this divisional arrangement. Problem is, there's no such divisional arrangement at the time of the book of Revelation. There's no structural catalyst of a 7 years. See? You get a hold of that. It's just, you see it. You see it. As we pointed it out to you, see. You see there's no 7 years in the book of Revelation. It's all a bunch of baloney. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, let's go back to the 2 witnesses, a parable of the church, prophesying. Now, the dispensation would say it's 2 literal witnesses in 3.5 years of a literal 7-year tribulation. No, that's all wet behind the ears. They're not getting the symbolism, see. The symbolism is it's a parable of the witness of the church for the gospel age after the destruction of Jerusalem, the second half of the 70th week. Yes, but it's the times and a half, see. What's the first half? Well, to the Jews first and to the Gentiles. See, Jesus' ministry to the Jews after Pentecost, the gospel was preached mainly to the Jews, and then the Jewish war broke in, and then the Gentile diaspora, the woman fleeing into the wilderness, and then you have the long age of the Gentile gospel mission. The Jews were sent into the diaspora so they couldn't hinder the gospel. Paul talks about the Jews hindering the gospel. Well, God got them out of the way. So there would be a chance for the gospel to go forward without their interference. That's what the diaspora was really all about. It was a punishment on the Jews for hindering the gospel. And after they were set aside in the diaspora, the gospel spread, you see, and that gospel preaching is what it's talking about in the parable of 2 witnesses. But here's the final time frame is that when they have finished their testimony, they prophesy the gospel age of the times of the Gentiles. But when they finish their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit. Now here's the beast ascending. Satan ascending out of the bottomless pit. The 5th trumpet, demonic hordes out of the bottomless pit. You see the connection here. See, so the beast ascending out of the bottomless pit overcomes the 2 witnesses. This is a historical view of what happened with the rise of Zionism, false prophecy, premillennialism. Christian Zionism now caused an ending of the gospel witness. They finished their testimony. Now, God didn't tell them to do that. We're not told to finish our testimony. Now, it's time for you to finish your testimony. Quit testifying. No, we're to keep testifying to the end. They finished their testimony by being deceived by the spirit of Antichrist in false prophecy, see, which happened in the 200 years of the demonic infiltrations, the torment, see, the atheism, the secularism, the materialism, the Zionism, the cultism. The last 200 years to 1988 was the climax. See. Then you have that last part, and then you have a final 3.5 days when the 2 witnesses have finished their testimony. They're overcome by the beast. Now, we overcome him by the blood of the Lamb and word of our testimony, but they are overcome. You see, Zionism kills. Christian Zionism is the death of the church. It's a return to Judaism in terms of ideology. It's a destruction of the gospel. Premillennialism is the destruction of the gospel. It says Jesus is coming back to set up his kingdom. Huh? Are you serious? You don't know nothing about it. Jesus established his kingdom on the day of Pentecost. He's not coming back to set up an earthly kingdom. You see, that's heresy. Earthly kingdom? No. What's that all about? You don't know. You're stupid. Yeah, I'm brutal to these people. They don't like me. I don't like them either. They're stupid. They need to wake up. You're just believing a lie. You're going to hell over the lies you choose to believe. Jesus established the promised kingdom on the day of Pentecost, and we're in the kingdom. And those false teachers said, well, the kingdom's postponed at the end of the 69 weeks. After the parenthetical 70th week, Jesus comes back to set it up. Well, that's garbage. You need to get over that. You were misled by those false teachers. And your dead bodies lying in earthly Jerusalem. Today, you finished your testimony with Christ. Now, notice 3.5 days. This is the last time frame. The apostate church under Christian Zionism has a short period called 3.5 days. And then after that, the Spirit of life from God enters in, and there is a resurrection. They stand on their feet. They're caught up to heaven. That's the rapture, you see. And their enemies beheld them. So we're in this last 3.5 days for years. We could say, I think the symbolism would hold that the 3.5 days is 3.5 years. So you go back to where we left off to 2022.5, thereabouts. The times and a half brought us there. And then you have this additional 3.5 years. 3.5 and 22.5, that's 26. That's where we are. The church is asleep. I mean, I heard the leader of a conservative holiness movement at their big convention say before the assembled crowd, we stand for Israel. Huh? They're Christian Zionists, so yeah, they do stand for Israel. I mean, they accept the genocide in Gaza. See, they're all, this is the cult. They're all a cult called Christian Zionism. Their dead bodies are lying in the streets of Sodom and Egypt, and they're going to miss the rapture unless they wake up, because it's happening and they don't even know what's going on. So we come now to the very end. Now, what happened at the beginning of this year, February 28th? The United States attacked in Israel, at the behest of Israel, the United States attacked Iran, was fought to a standstill, lost the war, really. I think that's becoming evident. We lost the war. Trump wants out, see, to save his political career. America wants out for the world economy's sake. Israel won't give up. We've either got to ditch Israel or go down with Israel, see. We've got a choice to make here. We're going to make it in the next few weeks. Or by the end of this year, we're going to make that choice. It's very critical. So we have then this very critical time. Now, we go into the sixth trumpet in Revelation chapter 9. You know, you had the 5 months of the demonic torments, the 200 years, and then you had the sixth trumpet. It says that the angels, 4 angels were released in the great river Euphrates to prepare to slay a third part of men. That's the remnant. We talked about that in our previous message, the rapture-ready remnant. We talked about the third part. The kings of the east, parallel to that in Revelation 16, the sixth vial of wrath, the same thing, the great river Euphrates dried up, and the kings of the east prepared to slay the remnant. The global balance of power shifting to the east. Russia's winning in Ukraine. The West cannot face the reality. We're so in denial. We are in denial in the West over the lies that we believe. We believe that Russia is weak. They're about to topple. We believe that Iran was weak. We could go over there in a day or two and overthrow their government. We were just wrong. We're wrong. We're wrong about Russia. We're wrong about China. We're so egocentristic. We're so hubris. We're so full of ourselves. We're so deceived that we don't understand what's happening in the real world, in the global south. The shift is happening to the east. The world's turning against Israel. And even the United States is wanting to ditch. A lot of people are wanting to ditch Israel, but we got these ties. The West has got its ties. A woman has ridden the beast, see, for the last history, see. since World War II. The shift is on now, and I believe before the end of this year is going to come to its full climax. Prepared, go back to the sixth trumpet, prepare for an hour a day, a month, and a year. What is that? It's a pinpoint of time. An hour, a day, a month, and a year. What's the year? I believe it's this year. The chronology that I outlaid brings us. A month, a day, and a year. What's that? It's a pinpoint of time. It's a date. Now, we don't know that exact date. I mean, we're talking about general chronologies and time frames and apocalyptic symbols. We don't need to know the exact date. That's why. Why would you know it? What would you do differently? See, no man knows the day. Well, we're not talking about a day or an hour. But it says at an hour, a day, a month, and a year, a pinpoint. We're in the year, most likely. Well, that ought to wake us up right there. What more do we need? I mean, if this isn't going to wake you up, well, there's nothing that will. It's crisis time. Prepared for a day, an hour, a month, or to slay the third part. Now go back and watch my last video, the Rapture Ready Remnant. This ties right there. Not the 7,000 that are slain, the remnant in the great earthquake. It all dovetails into a comprehensive picture of understanding that blows our minds. Well, it ought to. If it doesn't, there's something wrong with us. Well, I hope this has helped. It's just more knowledge added. It's an added to the collection of knowledge. 7 time frames in end time Bible prophecy. Get it right. Start with the 70th week. And go to my website, www.rapture, Rapture Bible, www.rapturebible.org, and follow the logic throughout my site, and you'll come along. You'll see. You'll get woke up. Praise the Lord.